Ready for our next storyteller? We asked him, tell us about something that instantly gives you a good feeling. And he said something that I had never heard of, a Vesper Martini. With his story, Fast Track to Happiness, please give a lot of love for Tim Walters.
It's the end of the summer of 1976. I've just turned 19. I've got a girlfriend, and I'm thinking, it's high time that I have that talk with my parents. So I sit them down on the sofa and I say, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna drop out of school and race sports cars. Awkward. Neither of them had attended college, and the vital importance of higher education had been firmly impressed on their 4 children from birth. And yet, my mother, the amateur singer and actress, may have been hearing an echo of her own frustrated ambitions. What she says is, well, honey, if that's what you really want to do. But I'm betting that deep inside she's screaming, follow your dreams, kid. My father is a man of few words, shy, introverted, taciturn, and by then he had been suffering for some years from debilitating ulcers and migraine headaches, often bedridden. And these were caused by the toxic chemicals used at the sawmills where he had worked. I know you're passionate about racing, he growls at me softly, but I didn't know it would make you stupid. Still, after that, they never stood in my way. In the spring, I exchanged my life savings, $1,600, for a 7-year-old Formula Ford. So think Formula One car, open wheels, engine behind the driver, but without wings and much smaller. Compared to the new cars, it was overweight, underpowered, ill-composed in the corners, but it was a great learning platform, and all that really mattered was I was racing. And I was living at home, the car was in the garage, I would tinker with it almost every evening, often just sitting in it, trying to resist the urge to make motor sounds. And sometimes my father would come out and join me, and we'd bleed the brakes or put in a new throttle cable, hardly exchanging a word, as usual. On some very rare occasions, he felt well enough to attend a race, and one of those was the high point of the 1977 season. I still have the photos. In one of them, I'm sitting in the car on the pre-grid where we line up in qualifying order before we go out for the rolling start, and it's cloudy but sunshine. My girlfriend is handing me my fireproof gloves. In the next photo, taken moments later, she and my father and my little brother are huddled around the car with umbrellas, trying to shield me and the engine from a torrential summer downpour. The track was flooded, but nobody in the field had time to switch from the slick, dry tires to proper rain tires. So we started the race on time, and it was total chaos, but also the most fun I've ever had in a car. People were spinning just going down the straight. Now, these conditions negated all the limitations of my old car. I started 10th, I got up to 2nd, and then I spin. I get back up to 2nd, I spin again, but I finish 3rd, and it earns me a cheap plastic trophy. Wait for it. And a hug from my father. At the beginning of 1978, I moved to Portland, I get a better job. By the middle of the summer, I've scraped together enough funds to rent a new Formula Ford, an incredibly sexy Lola T440, baby blue with a chisel nose and a flowing airbox behind the driver, and a long swallowtail that ends with what we call a gurney flap that provides more stability in the fast-speed corners. Now I can compete at the front without the intervention of a biblical flood. And yet, my funds are depleted after one race, and I have to go back to my old car. Fortunately, at this point, I meet Earl. Earl is the heir to a department store fortune, the Fred Meyer stores. If you know, you know, okay? Earl offers to sponsor me for a special semi-professional Formula Ford race at Sears Point, north of San Francisco. We arrive at the track, and before the first practice, Pierre, who's running the team, the guy I rented the car from, says, "Whatever you do, don't go off on turn 9. Sounds like bad Schwarzenegger. Why? Because turn 9 is the fastest of the fast sweeping corners on the back part of the track, and it's the place where the track is separated from concrete walls by just 2 meters of dried grass. So I finished 10th in the heat. I advanced to the final. The final uniquely has a standing start rather than a rolling start. None of us have ever done this before. The flag falls, and I watch in cinematic slow motion as the left rear tire of the car in front of me begins to spin, and smoke rises from it, and an object flies out from under it, and it describes a perfect Ptolemaic arc until, oh shit, I forgot to close the visor of my helmet. And a marble-sized rock slams into my cheek just below my left eye. This gets my attention. We all accelerate up the long front straight, approaching a hairpin turn at 130 miles per hour. 40 over-caffeinated, testosterone, ambitious, egomaniacal amateur racers competing for money for the first time. Chaos ensues. Cars are scattered all over the place. I get hit from behind. That pushes me into the car in front of me, but somehow I keep it pointed in the right direction. I make it through, and I continue, tasting the blood flowing down inside my balaclava. I immediately notice that the car is down on power on that long front straight, and it's really squirrely in the fast sweepers on the back part of the track. And on about lap 10 of the 15, I get a little too sideways, and I lose it in turn 9. I push in the clutch. That removes the drive from the rear wheels, and the sexy Lola spins neatly down the center of the track several times and comes to a stop, pointed in the right direction, precisely on those 2 meters of dead grass, my right wheel's a centimeter from the concrete wall. I climb out, and I see that in that turn 1 crash, the exhaust pipe has been bent, hence down on power on the straight. And that lovely tail and gurney flap have been mangled, hence the high-speed spin. On the solo drive back to Portland, I sit myself down for that talk. Look, Tim, you're not exactly on the fast track to Formula One. Sure, you won $50 for your heat race, but you have to give half of that to your multimillionaire sponsor. And in less than 2 years, you've spent enough money to pay room, board, and tuition for the last 3 years of college. And I say, okay, I get it. Sorry, Mom. Time to wake up from the dream. 2 weeks later, I drive down to Corvallis. My mother's at work. My father is in the darkened bedroom, as usual. And I crack open the door, and he calls me in. And I sit down on the edge of the bed, and I tell him that I'm going back to school. And he pats the back of my hand, and he says, "That's good, Tim. That's very good." And then he turns over and goes back to sleep. About 2 months later, December 12th, 1978, he checks into the hospital for an overnight stay so that they can test a new drug for his ulcers. And in the morning of that night, he experiences a massive brain hemorrhage and is dead immediately. The likely cause, they tell us, are those same sawmill chemicals which are known to weaken arterial walls. He was barely 58 years old. After the trauma subsides a bit, my mother relates that he told her how pleased he was to know that I was going back to school. Makes sense. But also how much he had enjoyed our time together with the cars, with the racing. So it was, for much too briefly, a shared passion, and those are the clearest and the happiest memories I have of him. Thank you.